question relates to the implementation of the recent white paper on enterprise for the period 2022 to 2030. Have you got a detailed timeline of the milestones? And particularly, my interest is in relation to supporting indigenous industries, which I'll come back to. Thank you.
Minister. The white paper on enterprise sets out the government's approach to enterprise policy for the period out to 2030. It includes 15 targets which entail the government's ambition in terms of employment and across the 7 identified priority enterprise policy objectives, which are integrating decarbonisation and net zero commitments, placing digital transformation at the heart of enterprise policy, advancing Ireland's FDI and trade value proposition, strengthening the Irish-owned exporting sector, enabling local trading sectors to thrive, stepping up enterprise innovation and building on the strengths and opportunities that are there, in particular by building specific clusters in different parts of the country that can benefit Indigenous and FDI companies. My department will lead the development of consecutive 2-year implementation plans of cross-government activity to implement the white paper commitments. The implementation plans will focus on delivery of key initiatives or projects under each of the 7 priority areas. The first implementation plan, covering the period to the end of 2024, will be prepared in Q1 of this year and published shortly thereafter. Progress will be reported on every 6 months to the Cabinet Committee on Economy and Investment and monitored on an ongoing basis via the Associated Senior Officials Group, with the first progress report being prepared in Q3 of this year. The biannual reports will include updates on progress towards the 15 targets, with new data under each of the measures included as it becomes available from the relevant sources. In terms of supporting Indigenous enterprise, the white paper sets ambitious targets to strengthen the Irish-owned exporting sector and enable local trading sectors to thrive. This includes doubling the number of large Irish exporters and having an additional 2,000 Irish firms exporting by 2030. Through successive implementation plans, we will facilitate enhanced management capabilities, provide access to competitive finance options, and nurture strong sectoral and technological ecosystems. We'll take action to fuel entrepreneurship and enable companies to scale and succeed from Ireland. Locally trading firms will be empowered to achieve their potential through supports that will align their business models with the transition to a net zero economy and boost their productivity through innovation, digitalisation and skills development.
Thanks, Minister. And I welcome that you're given a date for the implementation plan for the first quarter, and it will be published. I welcome that. And you set out the enterprise priorities and the targets, and I've read it. I welcome the white paper, although I have serious doubts about its failure to recognise that we need transformative change in how we do business, given the climate change. We have no choice. There has to be transformative change. So I'm a little worried that the white paper proceeds with the model as is. I'm all for a thriving economy and for a thriving Galway City. But I feel that that transformative message hasn't got through. So if I look and take that on a parochial basis or a specific basis, I look at the seaweed industry or the lack of an industry in relation to seaweed. I look at the wool industry, fantastic report produced, and nothing, something woolly about it, forgive me, about a wool council to be set up. There's no mention of islands. There's no mention of a policy for the islands, which is parallel, I know, but also very much part of the enterprise strategy. I'll stick to time.
Yeah, Deputy, they're very broad questions, and I'm just trying to think how I can give you an answer in a minute. I can assure you the islands will not be forgotten in an enterprise strategy. I can also assure you that small family-run businesses across County Galway and Galway City are very much part of our enterprise strategy. They need to be part of a transition to a decarbonised economy too. They need to be part of a move towards a digital-based economy too. And we need to help them do that. That's one of the reasons why we've changed the remit of the local enterprise offices, for example. Up until the end of last year, local enterprise offices could only deal with companies of less than 10 people. They can now deal with companies of between 10 and 50 people, which covers the vast majority of SMEs across the country. That's going to be a huge extra workload for local enterprise offices, and we need to staff them and fund them for that. And there's a whole suite of support measures and grant aid systems, mentoring. There's a very successful SkillNet program, which we want Irish companies to be engaged in terms of upskilling themselves. So there's a huge suite of measures here. What I would say is that this white paper was only launched in December. It's only a couple of months old. We don't even have the first implementation plan in place yet. But there is a job of work to do to get that narrative out there. That's why we're holding 9 regional business conferences around the country, the first of which starts next Friday morning in Letterkenny. And we will be taking this narrative out to the country to speak to businesses and to work it out with them.
Thank you, Minister. And I know we haven't enough time, but maybe it's the start of a conversation or a debate in relation to this, because I go back to the word transformative. We cannot continue to do business as we've done. That's the message from climate change and from the emergency that we've declared. And so we need to go back local and we need to go back small. And again, I repeat, the seaweed industry, this Dáil passed a motion back in, I think, 18 or 17, in relation, a motion I had tabled at the time, in relation to recognising the potential of seaweed for local communities. Nothing has happened, Minister. The exact same thing with wool. We have farmers, sheep farmers, complaining, rightly so, about no price for wool, when there's a fantastic opportunity to develop an indigenous industry with the varied possibilities that wool could be put to. And then if we look at balanced regional development, I realise it's only there since December, the paper, but okay, let me look at regional development, and there's an absolute commitment to regional development. What's the Regional Assembly saying, the North and Western Regional Assembly? The gap between this region and other regions has progressively widened, and they go on to say we're now widened in lots of spheres. The worrying trend has been attributed to a lack of investment in infrastructure assets. Sorry, I'm over time and I'm a stickler for time, so I'll stop in mid-sentence.
Minister, final reply.
Can I just say in relation to regional development, if you look at IDA numbers last year, if you look at Enterprise Ireland numbers last year, you will see that the majority of jobs that were created outside of Dublin, actually. And if you look at jobs growth and population growth, virtually every county in the country has seen an increase in employment and an increase in population. I think there's 1 or 2 exceptions to that, that's all. There is a reason why we're starting in Letterkenny in terms of the regional meetings, engaging with businesses. We're finishing in Dublin. We're doing 8 meetings outside of Dublin first to actually talk to and hear what businesses are saying, and the pressures they're facing and so on, so that we can respond to that. So, I take the points in relation to the perception. By the way, there are some very innovative companies that are using seaweed products in Ireland and exporting all over the world, adding significant value to those raw materials. That's what we want to be seeing in sectors that have potential, like seaweed, for example, has, and I believe seaweed has a lot more potential than we're currently delivering on. But we need to piece this together. We have an enterprise strategy now that takes us out to 2030 that I think is appropriate and very ambitious. And we are heading off around the country now to speak to businesses about how they can be successfully part of that.